This is the DJI Mavic 4 Pro. It's the latest camera drone from DJI and it was released in May of 25. I've had mine for about 3 months now, and in that time I've used it a fair bit, and in this video I'll be talking about what I like about it, what I don't, and a few things I've found out along the way of how to get the best out of it. Before I start though, I just want to point out that this video is not sponsored. I've bought the drone with my own money, so the views are entirely my own. Anyway, let's find out how it performs, and is it a worthy upgrade to the Mavic 3? Let's find out.
Home point updated.
There are several areas where the Mavic 4 Pro improves on the already great Mavic 3 range of drones. Firstly, we've got the rotating gimbal. Secondly, we've got the improvements to the cameras. And thirdly, we've got the RC Pro 2 controller, which I think is great. So let's start with the physical changes. As you can see, the Mavic 4 Pro is slightly larger than the older model. It also weighs just over 1 kilo, which tips it into the C2 category, and also it takes up a little bit more room compared to the Mavic 3. I also like the way they've designed the gimbal cover. The strap doesn't go all the way round now, which it did on the Mavic 3, which means that you can access the hatch at the back for the USB connection without having to undo the strap. It's a small difference, but it does make a difference in usability. Externally, the biggest difference is the rotating gimbal, which you can see here. Not only does this mean you can get native portrait video and photos like with the Mini 4 Pro, but it also rotates more than 360 degrees from -40 to +400, which gives some interesting video effects. Now personally, I think this is going to get old pretty quickly, but if you use it in moderation, it can give some really nice effects to videos. I think just go easy on it. I foresee we're going to get a lot of videos on Instagram and YouTube with lots of spinning, and to be honest, a lot of them make me feel sick when I look at them. You can control this manually with one of the dials on the controller, or if you don't fancy that, there's a quick shots function as well, which lets you do this automatically. And as you can see, there's quite a few different settings in there, so you can adjust the angle and the speed it moves at. Another feature of this gimbal is, and you can see here, it can rotate up to 70 degrees as well as 90 degrees down. So this gives you some really interesting possibilities for different types of footage. I really like the ability to rotate 90 degrees as well. It's ideal for vertical photos and filming video clips if you're doing like vertical formats for Instagram or TikTok. It just means you don't have to crop. One thing to mention though is when the gimbal's rotated 90 degrees, it's limited in how much it can move up and down, as you can see here. So when you're in vertical mode, you don't have the same ability to rotate the gimbal up and down as you do in the landscape mode. Now, there is a setting in the options menu to expand the range. This gives you a couple of extra degrees of tilt motion. So to do that, go into the control menu, go down to the gimbal section and enable this setting here, tilt angle, expansion in portrait. Now, depending on the way the drone's orientated, this will vary how much it actually changes. If you're moving the drone forwards, it's in this position, so obviously you're limited in your movement's going to be there. If the drone's stationary, it's going to give you a bit more upwards motion. If it's windy and the drone's moving around like that to control itself in the wind, you're going to have slightly less movement. Another thing to bear in mind is when the gimbal is rotated in this orientation, the speed of the drone is limited as well, and this is purely because it doesn't have the same ability to keep the gimbal in position when the drone's moving. So as you can see, it's a lot slower when this is rotated, and also if you're filming you can get jerky movements as the gimbal reaches its limits. So this is something to bear in mind. So if that's an issue for you, then you might want to rotate it back to landscape, and then if you need to film vertical footage, just use the vertical crop mode. Moving away from the drone itself, one thing I really like is the new controller. So I've gone for the Creator Combo, and this comes with the RC Pro 2 controller, which I think is fantastic. One of the best bits about this drone. If you go for the standard combo or the Fly More combo, you get the RC2 controller. Now this is the same that you get with the Air 3 or the Air 3S or the Mini 4 Pro. The thing I like about the RC Pro 2 is the screen is bigger, the screen's brighter, it's got more functionality in it, and I'll come on to that in a moment. The downside is it's slightly bigger, it's thicker, it's probably double the thickness of the RC2, it's heavier, and it's probably, I just worry about it, you know, dropping it or damaging it in a bag. The moving screen it seems very solid, I've not had any issues with it. But I just feel, and especially as it's an expensive controller, I just feel like I need to take a bit more care of it than with my other controllers. Now the main plus point about this controller is the flip out screen. So when you pull the screen up, it turns the controller on at the same time, and the screen itself you can fold back and forward so you can set the right angle. As you flip the screen up, the control sticks pop out, so you don't have to worry now about dropping control sticks and losing them, or trying to screw them in with cold fingers or gloves on. You know, it's all built in. Now some people have reported that they find these control sticks a little bit too soft. There's not enough springiness against them, and they don't find them that easy to use. Personally, I think they're exactly the same as the RC2. They seem perfectly usable to me. I've not had any issues. They're absolutely fine. The other thing I like about the screen being on top is the positioning. So with the other controller, the RC2, when your hands are on the sticks, it's covering up the screen a little bit. With the screen above the controls, it just makes it far easier to look at. It reminds me actually of my old Phantom controller when I had a mini iPad attached to it. It's really good having a big screen. It just lets you compose things more easily, lining shots up. The other thing I really like is the way that the screen rotates. When the drone's on, it'll flip the gimbal around 90 degrees as well. So when you're in vertical mode, you get the vertical view on the controller as well. So this again is fantastic. You know, you've got so much more real estate with it in vertical mode. Makes it so much easier to compose images, check focus, etc. It's just so much easier with a bigger screen. The RC Pro 2 also has a couple of extra controls that you don't get with the RC2. So on the left, you've got this dial command, so you can press it and rotate. So this, as default, is set to adjust the camera settings. So you press it down to flip between the different settings. So you flip between aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and exposure. And then when you're on that particular setting, you turn the dial and it adjusts that setting. You don't have to move your hand away from the controls onto the screen. You can do it all from the controller. The other handy control is this 5-way joystick, which is just by your right thumb. So with this, there's a number of configuration settings you can adjust. I've got it to select the different lenses, but you can have it set to do other things as well, so that's all configurable as well. And again, it just means you don't have to move your hand away from the controller and touch the screen. You can do it all with your fingers and thumbs. Another feature is the ability to record audio via the controller. So this records audio onto the drone footage, and it uses an internal mic in the controller. You can also attach a DJI mic via Bluetooth or via the USB-C port. I'm going to do a review of this in a forthcoming video, so tune in a few weeks hopefully to see how that comes out. Even though this controller is new, it also works with the Air 3, the Air 3S and the Mini 4 Pro, and actually with the Mini 4 Pro it works really well. So the rotating screen also rotates the gimbal on the Mini 4 Pro, and you know, it's just great having a big screen with that as well. All the settings work exactly the same. So just for the controller alone, if you've got a few other drones, it's really good to use with those as well. For me, the cameras are the most important part of this drone, and as a photographer, this is one of the things that's really excited me most about this upgrade. Now with the Mavic 4 Pro, you get 3 cameras. This is similar to the Mavic 3 Pro. So 2 of these have changed, the wide-angle lens and the telephoto. The medium one, the 70mm one, that's the same lens effectively as you get on the Air 3 and the Air 3S and the Mavic 3 Pro. So I'm not going to go into the detail of that one too much. The sensors are all different sizes, as you can see in this diagram I've put together. So the wide-angle lens has the largest sensor. This is a 4/3 sensor. The medium lens, which is the 70mm lens, is a bit smaller, and the telephoto lens has a sensor that's even slightly smaller than the Tele lens. Now this is a fair bit bigger than the telephoto lens from the Mavic 3, so this should give quite a good improvement in the quality from the Mavic 3 to the Mavic 4 Pro, but we'll go into that in a bit more detail shortly. The 28mm lens is 1 stop wider than the Mavic 3, it's at f2 rather than f2.8. It's also 25 megapixels rather than 20, so you get a little increase in resolution, and there's also a 100 megapixel mode as well. Now, one thing to bear in mind in this, the quality is fantastic, and I'll show you that shortly, but it apparently shoots in 12-bit mode rather than 14, so you probably, in theory, there's a reduction in the number of colours captured. In reality, I think most people aren't even going to notice this, and I think it's only really if you're doing some really hardcore sort of editing and pulling lots of detail out of shadows on underexposed images, that's probably going to notice there. But I think for most usage, I couldn't see much difference, so I don't think it's really worth worrying about. The 100 megapixel vert mode is really impressive. I'll also be doing an in-depth review of these cameras and comparing them to my Canon R5 and my Fuji GFX cameras, which is actually a proper 100 megapixel medium format camera. I'll be doing that in a future video, so tune in soon to keep an eye out for that. And I think it'll be quite an interesting video. I've taken a lot of footage already, compared them, and there's some quite interesting results that come out of it. There's also a new feature called dual ISO, which there isn't a huge amount of documentation about, but apparently it uses two different circuits to take two images at the same time with different ISOs, so you get a bigger dynamic range. Apparently it's up to about 16 stops of dynamic range. Now again, this is quite hard to test. I've done a few tests and I'll be going into this in a bit more detail, but to be honest, what I've seen so far, the dynamic range is really, really good on this drone. Like the Mavic 3, the wide-angle lens on this camera has a variable aperture, and it's actually a physical aperture that changes, as you can see, and this gives you some really nice star effects when you're shooting into the light. Moving on to the second camera, this is basically the same as the camera on the Air 3 or the Air 3S, and even the Mavic 3 Pro, so I won't go into too much detail. The telephoto lens has also been upgraded, and this is one of the big improvements of this drone compared to the Mavic 3 range. The sensor's bigger, the lens is improved, it's now f2.8 rather than f4.4, and the quality is just, is a bit better, and it just makes a difference. One thing to point out though is, and I've found this a few times, especially on the medium and the tele lens, is that occasionally it loses focus, so it's always worth tapping the screen to refocus before you take an image, especially if you're moving the drone around or you've got a subject that's moving. It's just something that's caught me out a few times and something I thought I'd mention. One of the functions I really like, and I think this was introduced on the Air 3S, but I've obviously not had it on the Mavic 3, is the free panorama mode. Now this is fantastic, I think. I do a lot of panoramas, and this gives you the ability to select the range of the image from the left to the right. One thing I really like about this mode, it gives you the option of saving raw files, which you can then import into Lightroom and then merge to panorama there. And actually I find the results you get from Lightroom are better than the internal drone merging. The other thing you can do as well, which works really well, especially for situations like sunrise or sunset, is you can do auto exposure brackets during the panorama as well, so you can save 3, 5 or even 7 images of different exposures within the panorama. So again, you can merge this in Lightroom really easily just using the merge HDR panorama, I think it is, and you get some really, really good results there. Another small thing to mention is that you can now adjust the ISO in increments of 1/3 of a stop rather than a whole stop. What I'll do now, I'll talk you through some of the photos I've taken and just show you the quality of the different lenses, and you can see for yourself how they compare. Okay, we're in Lightroom and I've opened up 2 images. So on the left we've got one from the Mavic 4 Pro, and on the right it's the Mavic 3. The first thing we notice is that the aspect ratio is different. So the Mavic 4 Pro's got a 3:2 ratio and the Mavic 3 is a 4:3 ratio, so it's a bit taller. The other difference is the focal length of the lens. So we can see here the Mavic 4 Pro's just cropped in a little bit more, or zoomed in a little bit more with the 28mm. The 24mm lens on the Mavic 3 is showing a bit more. So we can see here we've got a bit of the hotel here on the right and a bit more of the bridge on the left. Now normally you could just fly the drone back a bit to get that same field of view for the Mavic 4 Pro. This may not always be possible though. For example, if you're in flying in a forest or around buildings, that you may not be able to move backwards. Or if you're doing a top-down shot and you're at maximum altitude and you just can't go any higher, so you might need that extra lens width in those situations. But they're fairly niche edge cases, so that's probably not going to impact most people. Anyway, let's have a look at the detail. So we'll zoom in to both of these to 100%. And as you can see, the Mavic 4 Pro image, it's 25 megapixel versus 20, so it's a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is zoom in to 200% on both of them, and in fact I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on the Mavic 3 image just so they're the same size, so it's a similar comparison. There we go, that's about right. So I think it's pretty obvious that the Mavic 4 Pro is just that little bit better in terms of quality. So it's sharper, it's bringing out more detail in the brickwork of the bridge and also the buildings. You know, this building to the left of the gherkin, you know, you're just getting a bit more detail out of the windows and the gherkin itself. Now if we change to a different location, we'll go this spot here. Let's just move that. So we can see here the name of the bar, copper, it's a little sharper on the Mavic 4 Pro version, and the bridge detail as well in the handrails. You know, it's just that little bit better. It's not an amazing difference, but saying that, the Mavic 3 camera is a great camera. You know, I've got some fantastic photos from it. It's really not a bad camera at all. So the Mavic 4 Pro just takes that on a little bit extra and it just improves it a little bit. So I think that's a worthy improvement. The next thing I'm going to look at is the difference between the 25 and the 100 megapixel modes on the camera, on the wide angle camera on the Mavic 4 Pro. So we've got this photo here. So the one on the left is the 25 megapixel and the one on the right is 100 megapixel. You can see here at the top we've got the resolution, and you can see from the date and timestamp these were taken literally seconds apart. I've done the same edits to both of them. I've edited this in Lightroom and I've applied exactly the same. I've copied and pasted the edits so they should look exactly the same. Now if we zoom in to both of these, so in fact I'll zoom that one out. So the one on the left is zoomed in 200% to make it the same size on screen. The one on the right, the 100 megapixel version, is 100%. So we can see here that the detail in the sky and the colours it's bringing out of the sky, the texture, I'd say that's exactly the same. There's no loss of quality there in the colours and the texture and the gradients. And if we look at some of the brighter areas, you know, the lights of the buildings, again, it's I can't tell a difference there, to be honest. The only difference I can tell is that the 100 megapixel version is sharper. It's just bringing out more detail. You can tell that here with the numbers of the floors. You know, just the sharpness of this text and the detail it's bringing out. It's just I think it's, you know, it's a noticeable improvement. So let's have a look at a different area of this image. So we've looked at the highlights, we looked at the bright areas. Let's have a look at the shadows and see how it performs there. So again, the 100 megapixel version is just that little bit sharper. You can read the text on this crane here, just about Canal River Trust, and it's just not, you can't do that on the one on the left. It just doesn't bring out enough detail. You know, the vans, there's just more detail on the 100 megapixel version. The text here is sharper. You know, it's just more detail everywhere really. In terms of detail in the shadows, I'd say it's done pretty much the same job on both. There's no loss of quality with the 100 megapixel version. If anything, it's very slightly noisy, but that's nothing you couldn't remove with a bit of noise reduction. So I'd say these are both very, very similar images. The only difference is the sharpness and the amount of data in the image from the 100 megapixel version. So I'd say it's not just marketing. From what I can tell, it is a better quality image. You can print it bigger, you can crop in more. I think that's great, but let me know what you think in the comments. The next image I'm looking at is this one I took at sunset. So it was shooting straight into the sun, as you can tell. So we've got very bright highlights in the sky and very deep shadows in the foreground. So what I'm going to do is, and I wouldn't normally do this is kind of crazy adjustments, but I'd go -5 on the exposure. And if we zoom into the sky, it's obviously the middle of the sun is completely blown out, which we'd expect, but there's still a lot of detail in the sky around it, very close to it. You've got a nice gradient, it's not sharp drop-offs, it's not blocky, you know, it's picking up a lot of detail in the clouds here. I'd say that's done a really nice job of pulling back detail in the highlights. If I change the exposure all the way back up to +5 from -5, again, I'd never normally do this type of adjustment. It's kind of way too big to be sensible. But it's just really illustrating how much detail you can pull back from the shadows. So this is a +5 exposure adjustment, and obviously the shadow detail is very noisy, as you'd expect, but there's still a lot of detail in there that's usable, and you could apply some noise reduction to this and get rid of a lot of this noise. I mean, you can count the number of windows, you can look at the detail on this bridge here, this walkway, you know, the detail on the boat. There's still a lot of detail that it's pulling out, which if we go back to turn that back to pretty much 0, that's kind of straight out the camera, and as you can see here, it's almost completely dark in this area here, and if we expose that up 5 again, you know, it's pulling out an amazing amount of detail. So I'm impressed. I think that's done a really good job. Another thing I found is in certain images with particular patterns, you get this strange moire effect, which you can see here on the walkie-talkie building. So if I zoom in a bit to this, so we've zoomed in to 200%. Now this is what you get when a camera sensor doesn't have an anti-aliasing filter on the top, which basically just removes these strange patterns. So obviously DJI have removed the anti-aliasing filter to give a bit more sharpness to the sensor, but it means that when you photograph certain patterns, you can have this weird effect. Now it's not the end of the world, you can actually remove it, and I'll show you how to do that now. So I'm in Lightroom. What you need to do is click on the brush, or click on the mask and select a brush, and then what you do is you just paint over a little mask on this area here, all the way down. I'll just do this quickly just for the purposes of this example. Then what you need to do is go over to the right and scroll down right to the bottom of the mask section, and here under the detail section you've got a slider for Moire. So what you need to do is scroll this all the way to the right until the patterns disappear, and as you can see, as it goes over to the right, they're gone, and you can see the effect that has if I just turn the mask on and off. So the mask's off, so you can see the pattern, and it's gone. And if I move that back to 100%, that's effectively disappeared now. So it's an easy thing to fix, but it's just something to bear in mind if you're photographing particular subjects with this type of very fine detailed pattern. The next thing we're looking at is the telephoto lens on both the Mavic 4 Pro and the Mavic 3. So on the left here we've got the Mavic 4 Pro, and on the right is the Mavic 3. So very similar focal length. The sensor's slightly bigger on the Mavic 4 Pro, and the lens is slightly better as well apparently. So let's see how they compare. So we zoom in to 200% on both of these, and it's not an amazing difference, but there is an improvement. You can just see there's just a bit more sharpness in the Mavic 4 Pro image. Just the lines are better defined in the brickwork and the stonework and the window frames, etc. The Mavic 3 is just a little bit soft, and that's always what I found with it. It was just a little bit too soft to use. Now if we have a look at these buildings here, have another comparison, and again we're seeing the same thing. You know, the Mavic 4 Pro, it's just sharper. These window frames, the vertical and horizontal lines in the building are just more defined, sharper. On the Mavic 3 they're just a bit softer. Same with the gherkin. I think it just makes enough of a difference to make it usable when it probably wasn't really before. Anyway, let me know what you think, and back to the rest of the review. Moving on to video now. There are some big improvements here as well as a big limitation which really is bugging me at the moment. So the main camera now records 6K at 60 frames a second compared to 5.1K at 50 for the Mavic 3. If you wanted 60 frames a second on the Mavic 3, you can only shoot that in 4K. Now one big improvement is that all three cameras now shoot in both D-Log and D-Log-M as well as normal colour modes, which makes it much easier to have consistent colour grades across your images, especially if you're using footage from all three cameras in the same film or the same video. I really like the ability to film with three different focal lengths because you can get that wider view, you can then sort of zoom into the medium view and then go right zoomed in for a detailed view, and that just gives you so much more flexibility when you're creating content. The cameras also have an extended ISO range compared to the Mavic 3. You can go up to 12,800 in normal mode and 6,400 in D-Log, which compares to just 1,600 with the older drone. So this means, you know, low light performance is a lot better when videoing, and I'll go into this in a bit more detail in another video. With the 28mm lens, you can actually get native 6K vertical footage just by rotating the gimbal, so this is way more than you could get with the Mavic 3. You can also shoot cropped 4K without rotating the gimbal, so this might be useful if you want to rotate the gimbal down a bit more than you could do with it rotated and still get that vertical format in 4K. Slow-mo is available on all three cameras. You can go up to 120 frames per second on the two wider cameras. The telephoto lens is limited to 100 frames a second, and like the Mavic 3, this does crop in compared to the normal mode, although for some reason it doesn't crop in on the medium lens, the 70mm lens. I don't know why. As standard, the drone records video in H.265. If you go for the creator combo, you can record all eye, which is basically has less compression within each frame of the video, so it gives you more detail in the video for editing, especially if there's a lot of movement within the video. But it takes a lot more storage. The reason you only get this on the creator version is that it comes with a 512 gig SSD card. The write and read speed of this is a lot faster than you get with an SD card, as you can see here. So all eye saves at a much higher bitrate, which gives you a lot of flexibility. It's also the only mode that records in 10-bit 422, which gives you more colour data within the video. When you record in H.265, it's also 10-bit, but it only records in 420 mode, so there's less colour data being retained. The other advantage of the creator combo is with the speed of the SSD card. It's a lot quicker to transfer footage from the drone to your computer. The other good thing I like about this drone is you can plug it in with a USB-C cable. You don't need to turn the drone on. It just reads the memory card and the SD card straight away, and you can download data without having to remove cards or turn the drone on. So I think that's a really nice feature as well. I think you get that on some of the other drones, but not with the Mavic 3. So this is where there's an issue, and it's one of the big issues I found with this drone. If you record in 6K in all eye, which you do if you want, you know, the full range of the maximum details in the video for editing, it's very difficult to edit that footage. I've got a Mac Studio with an M3 Ultra chip, and it just doesn't read that footage at all. It just appears black. I can't import it into Final Cut Pro. I can't even read it in Finder or QuickTime or anything. It just doesn't work. The workaround is to convert it to ProRes using something like DaVinci Resolve or Handbrake or another tool. The only downside to that, it's something else you've got to faff around with, and there's, you know, these tools cost money, which I don't really want to have to pay for, you know, another editing tool for this. And it's not ideal to have to, you know, transcode the footage into another format before using it. So until DJI come up with a fix, it means that one of the big selling points of this drone isn't usable unless you've got a PC that can read it. I think some PCs work okay with it. Windows, I think, is fine, and I think some earlier M1 Mac chips work. Now, I don't know why they didn't keep ProRes like you had on the Mavic 3 Pro, or I think the Cine version. I think it's a step down. It basically means one of the big selling points of this drone isn't usable for most people, and I'm hoping DJI come out with a fix for it soon. Otherwise, the 6K all-eye footage with the maximum detail just isn't usable. Anyway, to get around this, I've been shooting 4K in all-eye, but 6K in H.265. And what I'm going to do is do some side-by-side testing and do another video to cover that in a bit more detail. So hopefully I'll find out if there's any difference at all between the modes. So now we come on to performance, and although the Mavic 4 Pro is bigger and heavier than the Mavic 3, it's actually quicker in all respects. Horizontal speed, you can, standard, it's got a maximum of 25 meters per second, which I think is about 55 miles an hour. There is a setting that you can change to bump that up to 27. Now this only seems to work if you've got a tailwind. It doesn't seem to work on a still day. I tried it and only managed to get 25, but with a following wind I managed to get the 27, which is, I think it's about 60 miles an hour, which is pretty impressive actually, really. Now climbing speed and ascending and descending speed, that's 10 meters a second, so that's very rapid as well. That's quicker than the Mavic 3, and as you can see it easily gets those numbers. Other improvements include obstacle detection and avoidance. There's a new LiDAR sensor on the front, which you can see here. This lets the drone detect objects down in really low light, so down to 0.1 lux apparently, compared to I think 15 on the previous model. This is really ideal if you shoot in low light conditions. It just means that you're less likely to crash into things and potentially lose your drone. Battery life is worth a mention too. The batteries are very similar in size to the Mavic 3, but they're bigger in capacity, so 95 watt hours compared to 77. This gives a claimed flight time of 51 minutes. Now this is in ideal lab conditions. You'll never get this in real life, but I've noticed a notable improvement compared to my Mavic 3, and easily managing flights of 35-40 minutes, and that's great. You can go to a location, you don't have to worry about getting the drone up and back again as soon as possible. You can hover it and wait for the light to get in the right place, or you can, if you're waiting for a particular composition, you can afford to wait around and just loiter in particular locations. If you get the Creator Pack, it also comes with the upgraded 240 watt charger. So this charges all 3 batteries in parallel. It charges one battery in about 50 minutes, or all 3 in about an hour and a half. Now the standard 100 watt charger with the cheaper packages will charge one battery in 80 minutes. You can also charge the batteries within the drone itself, but this will take a longer time. I found charging all 3 in the battery housing is really easy and quick. It's really good if you've got a short turnaround to get back out again. Now another feature which I think is great, and I've wanted on previous drones when I've been shooting on a boat, it's the return to home feature that returns to the location of the controller when the controller's moving. So previously you could set the drone to return to the controller, but it would only be where that controller was at that moment in time. With this new setting, it will follow the controller. So if you're on a boat and the boat's moving, or you're in a car that's driving and the drone's following you, it will follow the location of your controller, and when it returns to home it will just hover above where you are, and I think that's a great improvement. So just to wrap this video up, in my view the Mavic 4 Pro is a nice improvement over the Mavic 3. The photo quality is better, the video quality is better, the performance, the battery life, the controller, the rotating gimbal, these are all great features, and I think they're all worth an upgrade from the Mavic 3. Which already was a very good drone anyway. The main thing I don't like, as I've mentioned already, is the 6K all-eye issue. I can't edit those videos on my Mac, and I think a lot of people have the same issue. To be honest, you've paid all that money to have that quality and you just can't use it. That's quite a big issue, and hopefully DJI will fix that soon. I'm not a huge fan of the 28mm focal length with wide-angle lens. I'd have preferred 24, but it's not the end of the world. And with the panoramic mode as well, you can work around that in a lot of ways. And as a trade-off, by having the vertical, the ability to rotate the gimbal up, it's probably it's probably a worthwhile trade-off. The other thing I don't like so much is the limitation with the movement of the gimbal when it's in vertical mode. It's just a shame that you can't move it up and down more than you can. There's not much we can do about that, but it's still worth having that mode, and it's still usable. It's just if you're trying to do certain shots, you're not going to be able to get it. But then you do have the ability to rotate it in horizontal mode, so it's not the end of the world. Aside from that, it's a fantastic drone. I'm glad I've upgraded, and I've got some really good footage, really pleased with the quality of the images especially. It's a really nice drone to fly. It's just solid and stable. It's not a sporty drone with the size and the weight and the design, but it's a really nice stable platform for taking photos, which is what I do with it. So if you're a photographer, then I definitely recommend it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks a lot for watching. If you have enjoyed it, then please do hit the like button, and I'd really appreciate if you subscribe as well. Thanks again for watching.